over 20 years ago, Lori and I and our two young boys at the time went on a trip with Lori's folks to Washington, D.C. It was a great thing, and they paid for most of it. That made it even better. But on the Sunday that we were there at the hotel, we decided we were going to go to church. And we had a vague idea of where some churches that we might like to go were. So we set out to look for those churches. Now, keep in mind, this is before cell phones, before GPS. Could not find these churches to save our lives. After a while, we just kind of gave up. And we said, hey, let's go back to the hotel, and we'll have a communion ceremony around the pool. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So we go back to the hotel, and we're around the pool. Then all of a sudden, I think it was Lori, maybe her mom. It was probably her mom because I did it. So I don't know. But she said, why don't you go get some communion elements? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. Now, keep in mind, didn't know where I was, no GPS. And so I set off in search of some appropriate communion elements for this service. Got lost in Washington, D.C., did not know where I was. And finally, I stumbled into a little grocery store, and they had some what I would consider, appropriate things, although we should have just used Cheez-Its. But I get back to the hotel. I'm so excited because I've done this. And they're in the pool swimming, and Lori's like, just don't worry about it. I'll be honest with you, I was hot. That is the only time that I kind of had the smallest ill feelings toward my mother-in-law right there. But let me ask you a question, how good would it be, or how much would you like if every Sunday morning you could either sleep in or hang out by the pool, and you didn't have to get up. You didn't have to get the kids ready and go off to church. How awesome would that be? Kind of the first 3 months of COVID, right? There's an old joke about a mother who yells upstairs to her family, hey, you better get ready because we're leaving for church in 5 minutes. A voice yells down the steps, I'm not going. She yells up, oh, yes, you are. Now you've only got 4 minutes. The voice yells down, well, I'm not going. It's boring and nobody likes me there. She said, well, now you've only got 3 minutes. Now get down here because we're going to church. And the voice says, now tell me 2 reasons why I have to go. And she said, well, I'll give you 2 reasons. First of all, because I said so. And second of all, because you're the pastor and you've got to go to church, right? Now that's a stupid joke. Probably 90% of you have heard that before. But there was one year we were on vacation, and we almost always go to church when we're on vacation, but sometimes we don't. And we were on one of those vacations, we weren't going to church, and I was sitting there sleeping in on a Sunday morning, and I thought to myself, this right here is our competition. It's not other churches, but it's sleeping in. It's sitting by the pool, and now it's doing a variety of many, many other things. And I know you felt this when COVID first hit. I know that you felt this because I heard from many of you, hey, Chris, I hate to admit it, but I'm kind of digging this, sitting here in my recliner and with a cup of coffee and watching you on the TV. I kind of like that, and I get that. But I want to burst our bubble a little bit this morning. I want to look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25. In Hebrews 10:25, the writer is concerned that the early Christians were getting perhaps a little too comfortable in not meeting together for weekly worship. And understand the larger context of Hebrews 10 is that he is giving them exhortations because he's worried that they are in danger of a variety of things, but that they need to stay strong as a community, especially during difficult times. And so in Hebrews 10, he writes things like, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance that faith brings. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Verse 24, let us consider how we may spur one another on toward good deeds and love. And then here's verse 25. And let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And then he gives some dire warnings about the dangers of falling into deliberate sin after we become Christians, and how we need to stand firm against the culture. And so there are a lot of reasons. This is just one of them. There are a lot of reasons in the Bible why we are to worship and to gather together as a community of believers, and why it's so important. That we need to encourage one another to stand strong. We need to have our faith built up. We need to work together in a common goal to further the mission of the Lord. We need to draw near to God with sincere and full hearts. And then Acts 2 that I read a moment ago talks about how the Christians met together at least once a week, probably more times than that. And there was this danger and concern in the early church that the longer people go without meeting together as a church, without worshiping in community, the more of a danger that they would just become like, whatever about worship. Now, recently, as I said, there are many reasons and many things in the Bible I could read to you and talk about. I'm going to do that in a moment. But a couple years ago, I was wondering and stumbled across this, and I was wondering, is there any scientific evidence that there are other benefits of attending church? And it shames me to say this, but prior to this, I had no idea. And I was blown away by the scientifically proven benefits of attending church every week. Not just like showing up, but being engaged and plugged in and making worship attendance your habit. It's just what you do. So I want to go over a couple of those with you. For example, I had no idea that attending church every week lowers your blood pressure. I know that may be hard to believe when you're trying to get the family and the spouse is ready for church, but it lowers your blood pressure according to the International Journey of Psychiatric Medicine. Among participants who both attend religious services and prayed or studied the Bible frequently, the likelihood of having a diastolic blood pressure of 90 or higher was 40% lower than found in participants who attended religious services infrequently and prayed or studied the Bible infrequently. Now, that's really good news for those of you that are Tigers or Lions fans, and so that's why when they start playing again, it's good to come to church and lower that blood pressure before kickoff, right? I had no idea that attending church every week boosts your immune system. We're kind of interested in this one right now, but one study in New York Times, one of the most striking scientific discoveries about religion in recent years is that going to church weekly is good for you. Religious attendance boosts the immune system and, again, decreases blood pressure. I had no idea that attending church every week allows for better sleep. You're like, yeah, we get some really good sleep during church, Chris. Like that. I mean, that is, like, I believe in that one, right? But this is what a national peer-reviewed study showed. Researchers showed more religious adults tend to exhibit healthier sleep outcomes than their less religious counterparts. One researcher in the journal article said, "We think it's because religious involvement may limit an individual's mental, chemical, and physiological arousal associated with psychological distress, substance abuse, stress exposure, and an allostatic load." Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about this word, allostatic load. And thereby promoting better sleep outcomes in practicing individuals. Like all that is just religious or psychobabble to say that you get better sleep. Which is why researchers at the Mayo Clinic, have stated that people who attend church every week, it's their habit, are just healthier all around. In their journal, they said religious involvement and spirituality are associated with better health outcomes, including greater longevity, coping skills, health-related quality of life, even during terminal illness, and less anxiety and depression and suicide. And so people who attend church tend to have lower blood pressure, stronger immune systems, sleep better, live longer, less anxiety, struggle with depression less often, cope better with the stresses of life. As a matter of fact, in a 2016 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the most widely circulated peer-reviewed medical journal on the planet, said this: women who attended any religious service once a week were 5 times less likely to commit suicide. That same study found women who reported attending religious services more than once a week had a 33% lower risk of dying during the study period compared with those who said that they never went. Now, I know undoubtedly you're probably thinking in your mind, well, Chris, I know somebody who broke those categories, and I understand that. This is studies show the majority of people, right? But on top of all those other things, those who attend church each week tend to have more satisfying marriages. According to the Institute of Family Studies, couples who practice their faith through regular church attendance together tend to report significantly higher relationship quality than those couples who do not attend services together. According to another nationwide research from the Pew Research Center, church attending adults report kind of just being generally happier. And it says those who attend religious services weekly or more are happier than those who attend less often. Those who seldom or never attend services are the least likely to say they are very happy. And then get this one. Parents who make it a habit of going to church, worship, plugging in, taking their children with you, tend to raise more successful children. A study compiling independent findings of more than 100 social scientists, Dr. Pat Fagan of the Center for Research on Marriage and Religion found this. He wrote, children who regularly go to church are less likely to get divorced later in life, are more able to overcome poverty, exhibit better academic performance, are less likely to engage in sexual activity as teens, and are less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. But finally, people who attend church each week, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, tend to do better financially, tend to make more money. And this was their finding. Doubling the rate of religious attendance raises household income by 9.1% overall and decreases welfare participation by 16% from baseline rates. Doubling the rate of religious attendance raises your household income by 9.1%. Now, every once in a while, it's good, and it's refreshing, and it's relaxing to go to Bedside Baptist or Poolside Presbyterian or whatever. But listen, on a habitual, regular basis, would you want to trade in sleeping a little bit longer, one day a week, in exchange for a higher likelihood of all these other things? I don't think anybody would want to do that, but the reality is that that's kind of what's happening now all too often. Now, we've been talking over the last several months about how we're a church. No matter if you're watching at home or where you are, we're still the church, we're still a community, and that is absolutely true. Listen, but there comes a time when the balance starts to shift, and it becomes more and more harmful to our spiritual lives and to a lot of other stuff the longer we go without being together in worship. And that's why we had decided as a church, we need to kind of go on the offensive. I mean, there's a reason why the Bible says, hey, don't give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encourage one another. And all the more as you see the day approaching. Now, what's the day? Well, the day, I think we can call any time of anxiety and stress and uncertainty when we are tempted to just jump ship on the faith. And I'm convinced that not meeting together each week is one of the most harmful things that we can do as a Christian. Now, I understand I'm treading into kind of controversial territory here, and there are some who will not agree, and there will be some who are upset, and that's fine. I'm going to probably do a lot more of that in the coming weeks, but I want you to listen again to Acts chapter 2. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many miracles and wonders and signs that were performed by the apostles. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. They sold property. They sold possessions to give to anybody who had need. And they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes together. They ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I mean, that is like what the church ought to be. Like that is at the very, very beginning. There was joy and there was laughter. There was common purpose. They were taking care of one another. They were providing for one another. And the unbelievers evidently saw this. The non-Christians saw this strange new community, or really cult they thought it was at the time. But they saw how they loved one another when they were in community together in worship. And they said, I want to be a part of that. I want that in my life. But right now, the weight of COVID and everything else that's going on, I fear is causing everything to fray. And I know that right now in our church, marriages are stressed, children are struggling. Young millennials, the 20s and 30s, they've just kind of checked out. People are disconnected from one another, and the evil one is loving all of this right now. And that's why we've got to go on we've got to be on a responsible offensive. Jesus said in Matthew 16:18, I will build my church, and not even the gates of hell will overcome it. So that has the picture of Satan is trying to overcome the church, and Jesus says you're not going to be able to do that. And that's why we began meeting together sooner than many other churches did. This is why Mark and Kathy have been carefully trying to maintain some semblance of children's and student ministry, doing it as safely as possible. But here's the deal, and this is really why I share all this stuff with you. And this, listen, trust me, when this is just from my heart where I'm at with this, because I want to tell you that I have struggled with this. I have prayed, I have thought a lot, I have read a lot, I have listened a lot to a variety of other people. And if you know me at all, some of you don't know me that well, but if you know me at all, you know that I am not a pastor who's like, hey, forget what the government says, forget what the governor says. She can't tell us what to do. My rights, my rights, my rights. That is not me, and that is not our church. The Bible says that we need to respect and pray for and to submit to our civic leaders, except when we're told to do something morally wrong. And then we're told to follow and obey God. But in this thing, our governor, now I don't agree with everything she said. I granted that some of the things that she has allowed and not allowed have not made a whole lot of sense to me. But one thing I do know is this, that she is one person responsible for an entire state. Lives are on the line. And I just get really disheartened when I pass by people's yards, and I know maybe they're Christians, or in churchyards I've seen where they have disparaging signs about our governor. I mean, she has responsibility for the entire state. I'm one person on a team of people responsible for a couple hundred people. And it's about driven me crazy. I can't imagine what she's going through. So having said all of that, I do believe there comes a time when we have to sort of weigh the pros and cons, and the government has made it very clear that they consider churches to be essential, and I do believe that. So I think more than restaurants, more than barbershops, more than health clubs, more than Home Depot, more than whatever else you might be doing, I believe that church is way more important, that we meet together in weekly worship. Now here's the danger. I love this quote that C.S. Lewis once said. C.S. Lewis said, I believe Christianity not only because I understand it and it makes sense to me, but I believe it because through Christianity I understand everything else. I believe Christianity because it makes sense, but I also believe it because it helps make sense of everything else. And here's the problem. When we don't meet together, the longer we go, the more at risk we are of forgetting that Christianity is the lens through which we view our entire lives. And we forget that. And little by little, everything else seems more important, more urgent. And so we prioritize world kingdom stuff over God kingdom stuff. And we become confused over how believers are to act and what we're to do according to Jesus. And so listen, the Hebrews writer says, don't get in the habit of skipping church. It says it's going to be all the more crucial as we get closer to the end. So don't get in that habit now. You need each other. You need others. Others need you. You're just better together. And when things are uncertain, when things are scary, when things are weird, when there's anxiety, when things are messy, and listen, we don't know what to make of stuff. That is not the time to unplug from our faith, to unplug from the community of believers. And so listen, the live stream, and I'm so glad that those of you on the live stream are watching, but I want you to understand this, and maybe we weren't clear on this, and again, we made a decision to suspend public services like every other church. We were already set up for the live stream. We were ahead of other churches, and I give God praise and thanks for that. And yet the live stream really, this is what it's meant for. The live stream is meant for people who are really, really sick, cannot make it to church, like there's just no way they can get to church. It's meant for people who go on vacation and occasionally go on vacation and don't go to church, and they want to watch our church, and many of you do that. The live stream is for people who have moved away from our church and still want to stay connected. And we have people that watch our live stream from all over the country, and we are so glad that you are watching. The live stream, one of the main reasons for it is because we want people to see what kind of church we are. And most people, when they come to this church, when they visit this church, they will have already watched one of our services. They've looked at our videos. They kind of have an idea of what kind of church we are. But the live stream is not a permanent replacement for being together as the church. And not only that, but I hate to say this, but our live stream views have fallen quite a bit over the last few weeks. Now, I get that's because a lot of you are here. I understand that. But it's been worse than that. In fact, it's not just our church, it's every church. National surveys have been done. 30% of the people who were watching live streams faithfully in the beginning of this and are not yet going back to church, 30% of them have just quit watching, have just disconnected from the church, and are at this point in time even kind of wondering, is it even necessary? Is it even necessary? Now, even as I say this, like I know I'm risking coming off as not caring about the real fears and concerns of people who might be the most vulnerable, and that is not the case. That is not the case as we've been talking about coming back, and I've had several emails or people message me with why they might not be coming back even to the first service and why they can't do it, and like I understand that, and I appreciate them taking the time to explain that to me, and I appreciate knowing what's going on in their lives. But listen, this is not pastor browbeating people, and if you don't come, you better tell me why. Like some of you may have been in churches like that, have grown up in churches like that. Like, that's not what I'm doing. If you want to share with me what's going on, that's great. But that's not what this is about. What I'm asking this morning is that we all just do some serious heart-searching, soul-searching, and prayer. And ask ourselves, why is it that we might feel okay going out to eat or to stores or other places or wherever, and yet when it comes to assembling together as the church, especially if we have an early service with all masks and we've got pews roped off, and you can sit as far away from everybody else as you want to. Like, you could come and go in my office and lay down on the couch, and you could probably see the live stream on the thing and the thing. I don't care. I don't care. But why do we feel like it's okay to maybe do some of this other stuff? As I've said, I've prayed a lot about this message. I've done my own heart check. Should we or shouldn't we? Is it right? Is it wrong? Whatever. And I do believe that we need to be as careful as possible as a church. But I do believe that for most of us, unless you're extremely vulnerable and health compromised, I believe for most of us, we need to be together. We need to be together. And the majority of Christians need to meet together as the church on Sunday morning in a safe, socially distant, as safe as way possible. I understand that. And whereas there are many reasons why we need to be together again as a church, we need to encourage one another, we need to fellowship, we need to strengthen one another, all these other things, we also need to be together as a church because that's kind of the mission we have as a church, to draw others toward Christ. And as we saw from Acts chapter 2, the greatest way we're going to do that is being together in community. The only way that we're going to regain the momentum we had as a church is if we fight the bedside Baptist or the poolside Presbyterian temptation. It's better for our health. It's better for our mental health. It's better for our spiritual lives to be together as a church body. So like the guy or person who wrote Hebrews, I'm going to just say, hey, let's not forsake the assembling together of ourselves, as some are in the habit of doing. And even more when times like this are just absolutely kooky. We need to be together because we're better together.